April 14, 1988, the Persian Gulf. A clear day with calm seas for the U.S. Navy's task of escorting Kuwaiti tankers through the war-torn Gulf. The frigate Samuel B. Roberts had just completed its escort mission, and while in the central Gulf, the ship's lookouts spotted 3 mines floating in the water. The commanding officer ordered the crew to general quarters, and with battle stations manned, attempted to back the ship out of the minefield along its original track. A submerged mine packing the destructive power of 250 pounds of TNT hit the Roberts hull. The explosion ripped a 22-foot hole in the frigate. The ship's 2 gas turbine engines spun off their mounts. A huge fireball shot through the main stacks. Decks and bulkheads buckled.
I was on the old 3 level, just above the pilot house, taking pictures of the mines. And when the mine went off, we all looked back because the helicopter was just lifting off, and a bunch of us thought that maybe the helo blew up. And all we could see when we looked back was a wall of flames and a lot of smoke.
I was standing about 15 feet behind where I am now, up on the 03, the next level up, and I was facing after the ship at the same instant that the mine went off. First thing I thought was that the helicopter exploded on deck, on the flight deck, which is where it was warming up at the time. Next I saw the flames shooting out of the exhaust stacks, and I thought that the engines blew up. Then I heard a mine, that we hit a mine over the 1MC, and that threw it all together there.
I picked myself off the deck because it just literally just threw me across the room. And the first thing was going through my mind was where was everybody else at and what was going on in the main spaces.
I was down amidships about a 25 millimeter. When the blast went off, I flew from the 25 millimeter just out of the torpedo tubes. And I got up and I looked around and I saw black smoke and debris flying everywhere, and I just started running.
I was inside the repair locker 5, and when the blast went off, I was blown off a desk or a table in repair 5, and then I ran on the mess decks and got my fire party started to string out some hoses.
First thought was I thought the helo had gone down because we just started the helo on deck, but when I still heard the blades of the helo turn, I knew what it was. It was a mine. And you can see the big ball of flame when it surrounded the whole ship. It came up through the stack at the same time, about 100 foot above the ship.
When the mine went off, I was at my general quarter station up in repair 2.
What did you think when the mine went off? What did you think it was?
I knew exactly what it was. We were prepared for a mine because the captain just got off the 1MC and told us we entered a minefield. And it surprised me that we hit one, but I pretty much knew what it was.
Okay, this is the upper level of the main engine room. What you're seeing over here is what used to be the controllable pitch propeller oil distribution box, the CPP sump heaters, and some other equipment that used to be down in the engine room lower level about 20 feet below us. The mine hit in between the 2 gas turbine modules here, and the blast forced all of the machinery up into the overhead of the engine room upper level. It also ruptured 2 fuel oil tanks and the main reduction gear oil sump. When the blast hit, we had 4 people inside here. All of them received burns, cuts, bruises. One man was trapped underneath the deck plates here. We had to pry the deck plate off to pull him out before he was drowned in the water and fuel oil.
It was the courage of the crew that made the difference when the explosion came. 4 problems had to be tackled in an instant. Fire, flooding, ship immobility, and crew injuries. The Roberts was dead in the water. Her main engines disabled. Tons of water in damaged spaces. Fires fed on ruptured fuel tanks. Floodwaters pushed on bulkheads. Cracks were developing in the superstructure. The Roberts commanding officer describes the situation.
We were hit with a mine. We had fires in 3 spaces. We had flooding in 3 major spaces. We had 10 casualties, none seriously, thank God. But the men of the ship followed their leaders.
At that particular time, the ship was faced with 2 serious damage control challenges, that of controlling the fire and that of controlling the flooding. The real thing that separates losing this ship from saving this ship was the performance of the crew. The ship was damaged in the manner that this ship was damaged is in a sinking condition. So it requires the effort of all hands to keep her afloat. And that's really what happened.
After the initial shock, the crew responded using teamwork and standard procedures for dewatering, shoring, plugging, patching, and firefighting. Procedures taught at all Navy damage control and firefighting schools.
Well, of course, initially everyone was in shock. We couldn't quite believe what we saw, but a few seconds later, the ball was rolling. Hoses were getting flaked out, water was being provided, and plans were being formulated to fight the fire as best we could. First reaction, of course, as always, is we ran man hoses and started moving aft towards where the mine hit. And that's by the crack that's goes from the foot stop beside the ship. Once we got to the crack, of course, we didn't go after the crack because there was another team coming from the aft end of the ship at that time. So we kind of met each other and started hosing down from there.
First thing I did was drop my camera, and a couple of us ran back here, started setting up hoses and grabbing OBAs so that we could fight the fire.
We had the hoses strung out. They said there was no fire main. We started rigging P250 pumps on the starboard side quarterdeck. And then they told us Chief Perez was trapped in the MER, and they did not dump halon in the modules. So I had 2 of my guys, Petty Officer Jackson, Petty Officer Kunish, light off OBAs. They were going to go get Chief Perez and light off halon in the modules. Petty Officer Jackson notified me that he stepped down. There was water up to the ladder. This is almost to the main deck by the mess decks. And so what we did, we started dewatering using a Perry-Jet adductor.
Well, as soon as the mine went off, I had my, I'm on scene leader and repair too. I had my fire party separated in 3 different spots. One on port side, one on starboard side, and one midships. That way, if one of the mines hit a certain spot, we wouldn't be trapped in any particular place. I'd have them spread it out throughout the ship. So the first thing I did was hit all 3 spots to find out if everybody was all right, and we manned our hoses and got a hold of Repair 5 to find out how the fire was in MER, main engine room. And as soon as we got the word there, we found we lost fire main. And so once we lost fire main, I had to send two teams up to one port side, one starboard side to start the P250s, which would have brought water, seawater from the ocean to give us fire main to fight the fires with.
The Roberts damage control teams had been training together for 2 years. They had attained the highest scores ever from the fleet training group in Gitmo prior to deployment. Lieutenant Eric Sorensen, the Roberts' former damage control assistant, describes the crew readiness.
They knew the ship very well. They knew the geography. They knew the major, all of them had the major subdivision bulkheads memorized all the way from the bow to the stern. They knew which spaces were located from the bilge up. They could tell you that the APU room was at frame 100, and that they could tell you that the bridge was located directly above that on the O2 level. So they could think in that manner. Of the 5 fire pumps on board, they knew what the primary and alternate sources of power were, which switchboards fed them, so that they can have an idea of if a machinery space was isolated electrically, what would that do to their firemen? The same thing with the AFFF stations. So you'd see the crew running around, and I'd ask them, and all they'd think is 12, 24, 31, 43, 43, and those are the magic numbers to tell them whether they're dealing with which switchboard and whether it was primary or alternate source. The main space fire doctrine was probably the best known document on the ship, and we had it miniaturized, and everybody on board, I think we had something like 300 copies made. Everybody on board carried one in their back pocket until they learned it. We held a couple of all-officer and chief petty officer fire drills. You might end up with an E8 storekeeper as #1 nozzleman, and the CSO, Lieutenant Commander CSO, is the AFFF station operator, just so that everybody had a good idea of what was really involved in the steps of putting out a fire. I had an unbelievably enthusiastic crew on Roberts. That was my biggest help. Very green initially, 70% hadn't been to sea before, but incredible enthusiasm and a positive attitude.
We got our repair parties together. We dewatered the ship in the spaces that were flooding. We set flooding boundaries and stopped the progressive flooding. And more importantly, we went in and we fought the fire until we put the fire out. It wasn't easy. It was scary at times, and it was dangerous. But the men were well led, and they had a lot of spirit. And more importantly, they demonstrated that they were well-trained and well-disciplined. A tremendous pride in their ship. They wanted to save her, and they fought very hard to save her. I'm proud to say that I'm their commanding officer, and I was a part of that.
The crew worked great together. Great teamwork, great participation, and effort from everything I've been hearing. You did a great job. Now we just got to try to get the ship back together. I think the whole crew reacted outstanding. Outstanding. I think that just happened too quick. Everybody just, they rolled, I guess you could say. Everybody just pulled together and did what they had to do.
Superb. Great job. I never seen a bunch of guys work together like that before. We stuck together. Like in training, we stuck together, and we're a real thing. It really worked out. I don't think there was a guy up there who wasn't forth 125%. Excellent. I don't think anybody could have done any better. There's no way I'd rather have anything different done. They did a superb job.
Everyone pulled together really well, and it was just incredible. I mean, I was up here the entire time, and in 3 hours the fire was under control, if not out, and dewatering was in progress. So I never felt that I was in any danger, other than possibly hitting another mine. But as far as the fire and controlling it and keeping the ship intact, I think we did an outstanding job. I don't think anyone could have done it better.
I think they reacted excellent. Quick response, very professional. They didn't have time to think. All they did was react from their training. They've been, through the last 2 years, a lot of training on DC, and I think it just came automatic. From firefighting to plugging to dewatering to starting diesels and switching generators and everything. It just kind of went. I went from every space there was, from AMR1 to 2 to MER to AMR3 to topside to fighting fires to plugging to dewatering, and every guy seen on the ship, from the new guy to the oldest guy, never even stopped to think. They just reacted, and it came with a lot of training, and I think everything worked out real good. That's what saved the ship.
After 5 hours, the fires were out. Shoring was in place, and spaces were being dewatered. Ammo was shifted to new locations. Doubler plates were welded to many of the structural cracks to maintain the ship's integrity. With some degree of control and free of the minefield, the Roberts traveled slowly under tow to Dubai.
It was the actions of the crew in fighting and successfully combating the fire, in taking various damage control measures to shore up weakened bulkheads and decks, and in lashing together areas where the superstructure, for example, had started to crack, that really kept the ship afloat and brought her safely into port.
Good engineering, good damage control, good leadership, but more importantly, more than anything else in the world, good sailors and good men.
That's general quarters. When you hear they say there's a mine or something out there, take it seriously. That's it. Get in your battle gear and get ready.
You know, when we go to general quarters, you're supposed to be in battle dress. And part of that is having your sleeves down and buttoned. I didn't think it was that serious. I left them rolled up. And if I'd have had them down, my arms wouldn't have gotten burned like they did.
It's not a game. It's the people out there are crazy and they're serious.
By all the rules of naval warfare, the wounded frigate should have sunk. The Samuel B. Roberts did not follow the rules. The crew wrote a story of heroism and ingenuity. They literally bound the frigate together with steel wire. They kept it alive to fight again.